You know, there are some passages in the Bible that you think you know inside and out. But what if one of the most famous ones has been widely misunderstood? Today, we're diving into a really powerful take on John 14. It's an interpretation that reframes the whole thing, not as a script for evangelism, but as a deeply personal message for anyone who's ever felt lost and afraid. We're stepping right into the final hours of Jesus' life, a moment of incredible tension and trauma for his followers.
And this, right here, is the key that unlocks the entire passage. According to the speaker we're analyzing, every single word Jesus says in John 14 is a direct answer to the overwhelming fear that's just gripping his disciples. This isn't some abstract theological lecture. It's crisis counseling at the absolute highest level.
So, what was this fear all about? I mean, this was a fateful night, and not just because of the betrayal and crucifixion that were about to happen. As the speaker points out, this was the exact moment God was about to pull off his most stunning act of redemption. But the disciples? They couldn't see that. They were in the eye of the storm, and all they saw was the terrifying reality of losing their leader.
Just try to imagine their state of mind for a second. They're not just sad, they are completely adrift, lost. The future isn't just a question mark, it's a terrifying, empty void. They're haunted by this deep fear of being abandoned, and they have absolutely no clue how to move forward without Jesus. And it's this raw, unfiltered anxiety that sets the stage for two of the most important questions in the whole New Testament.
So the first question comes from the disciple Thomas. You know, we often remember him for his doubt, right? But here, his question isn't coming from a place of skepticism. Nope, it's born out of pure desperation. It's a question that just perfectly captures that gut-wrenching feeling of being totally and completely lost.
You can almost hear the panic in his voice, can't you? It's such a simple, practical question. But man, it reveals a huge spiritual crisis. We don't know where you're going, so how can we possibly know the way? They're not just asking for a map, they're begging for a lifeline, for any glimmer of hope in the dark.
And then, the answer. It's one of the most famous and profound statements ever made. But Jesus doesn't give them a set of directions. He gives them something way more radical. He gives them himself. He says, "I am the way." And it's right here that the speaker we're looking at offers a truly game-changing interpretation.
Okay, now this is where our speaker's analysis really challenges how we usually think about this verse. He argues that for centuries, we've kind of ripped this verse out of its context and used it mainly as an evangelism tool. But what if that wasn't its primary purpose at all? What if it was really an internal message, a lifeline thrown to a bunch of terrified followers? The big insight here is that Jesus is telling them, hey, you don't need a map, you don't need a plan, you just need me. I am enough. Everything you need, I am.
All right, so if Jesus is the way, then what about the destination? That's the question that's eating away at the disciple Philip. And it gets at a different, maybe even deeper, kind of uncertainty. Not about the path, but about their ultimate relationship with God himself.
Philip's request is just so human. He's basically saying, look, just give us one glimpse of God the Father. If we can just see him, that'll be enough. That'll get us through this nightmare. He's not trying to be difficult. He's just being honest. He's looking for something real, something tangible to hold on to in this moment of crisis.
Jesus' response here is, well, it's revolutionary. And yeah, it's also a little bit of a gentle correction. He's basically saying, Philip, have I been with you for this long and you still don't get it? When you look at me, you're not just seeing a good teacher or a prophet. You are looking directly at the Father.
And this, according to the speaker, is the absolute mic drop moment. It's a claim so huge, so world-altering, that it's almost hard to wrap your head around it. Jesus is declaring that he is the full, complete, and final revelation of the invisible God. There's no next level to unlock, no secret knowledge you have to find. To know Jesus is to know the very heart of the God who spun the galaxies into existence.
But Jesus doesn't stop there. Just when the disciples think they've heard the most astonishing thing possible, he pivots. He moves from reassuring them about who he is to making a promise about what they are going to do. And it's a promise that, as the speaker points out, has been the source of arguments and debates for centuries.
Greater works than these. Just let that sink in for a second. What could possibly be greater than healing the sick, feeding thousands of people, or even raising the dead? I mean, this single explosive phrase has sparked so much theological debate, and it's a question that still challenges people today.
So what does it mean? Well, on one side, you have people who believe it's a promise of even more spectacular supernatural miracles than what Jesus did. But the speaker we're analyzing, he lands firmly on the other side. He argues that greater doesn't mean more flashy or more pyrotechnic. It means greater in scope and greater in spiritual impact.
And here's the really beautiful part of that interpretation. The greater work isn't about individual acts of power. It's about the global, world-changing mission of the church. See, Jesus' earthly ministry was pretty much confined to one little corner of the world, but his followers, empowered by the Holy Spirit, would take his message to the ends of the earth, building a global family. And in this view, the greatest miracle of all isn't healing a physical body, but the resurrection of a soul, that transformation from spiritual death to spiritual life.
But, okay, if believers are really supposed to do these greater works, how is that even possible? How can a group of flawed, fearful people actually carry on the mission of God? This leads us straight to the engine, the power source that makes this whole incredible enterprise run.
The mechanism, according to the speaker, is prayer. But this isn't prayer as just a cosmic wish list or a last-ditch effort. No. In the context of John 14, prayer is the guaranteed, non-negotiable power source for continuing God's work in the world.
And this reveals the secret. It's the key that unlocks the power of prayer. And it's a secret that totally flips our modern, self-focused idea of prayer on its head. Why is prayer so powerful? Well, it's not mainly for our benefit, or our comfort, or our success. The ultimate goal, the whole point of answered prayer, is that God the Father gets the glory through the work of his Son, carried on by his followers. It's about his reputation, not our resume.
The speaker points to the Lord's Prayer as the perfect blueprint for this kind of God-centered praying. Just look at the structure. It doesn't kick off with, "Give me." It starts with a passion for God's glory, a desire for his kingdom to come. Now, our personal needs are definitely important, they're right there, but they're nested inside this bigger, more beautiful purpose of honoring God and being a part of his mission.
And so, we come full circle. The disciples started the night as a bunch of terrified, confused guys, feeling lost, abandoned, and totally powerless. But after Jesus meets them in their fear and answers their questions, they are changed. The speaker sums it up with this powerful statement. Trusting in who Jesus is doesn't just make his followers capable, it makes them more than conquerors. That paralyzing fear gets replaced by a holy confidence and a world-changing mission. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? The speaker is really challenging us to shift our perspective. What if John 14 isn't mainly a promise of external power, but an invitation to internal peace? How does that change the way we deal with our own fears and uncertainties? And what greater works might God be calling us to, not in spite of our weakness, but actually because of his all-sufficient grace?